Jake Morrison crouched behind a pile of twisted metal, his eyes scanning the ruins that stretched for miles in every direction. The morning sun cast long shadows across what used to be New Detroit, but now looked like the graveyard of giants. Broken buildings reached toward the sky, like the bones of some ancient beast, while rusted vehicles lay scattered like toys thrown by an angry child. "Clear on the left," whispered Maria Santos, her voice crackling through the old radio clipped to Jake's belt. She was 50 feet away, hidden behind the remains of a crashed hovercar, her dark hair tied back under a faded baseball cap. Maria had been an engineer before the war, back when humans still traveled between stars and built cities that touched the clouds. Now she spent her days digging through garbage, looking for pieces that might still work. Ben Carter moved up beside Jake, his footsteps silent despite his size. The big man had been a military planner once, someone who moved armies across space, like chess pieces. These days, he helped Jake plan raids on alien supply dumps and figure out which ruins were safe to enter. His weathered face showed the weight of 50 years spent watching his people slowly die. "The scanner's picking up something big down there," Ben said, pointing toward a massive crater in the distance. "Looks like part of an orbital shipyard. Must have come down during the first wave." Jake nodded and stood up, adjusting the plasma, rifle slung across his back. The weapon was a mix of human and alien parts that Maria had put together from salvage. It looked ugly, but it worked better than anything the aliens had built. That was the thing about humans. They might not be the smartest or strongest species in the galaxy, but they were the best at making something from nothing. The 3 survivors made their way through the rubble, stepping carefully around the deep holes that dotted the landscape. Some of those holes went down for hundreds of feet, filled with water that glowed strange colors from the radiation. Others were home to the creatures that had crawled out of the alien labs when the bombs fell. Jake had learned to avoid both. "Remember when this place used to have trees?" Maria asked, kicking at a piece of concrete. "My grandmother told me stories about parks where kids could play and rivers that ran clean. Hard to believe it was all real." "It was real," Ben said quietly, "and it will be again. Someday." Jake wished he could share Ben's faith, but 50 years of scraping by had taught him to focus on today. Today meant finding supplies. Today meant staying alive. Today meant keeping his small group of survivors fed and armed. Tomorrow was a luxury. That dead people couldn't afford. They reached the edge of the crater and looked down at the wreckage below. The orbital shipyard had been the size of a small city when it orbited Earth, building the warships that once protected human space. Now it lay broken at the bottom of a hole, its metal hull split open like a cracked egg. But Jake could see intact sections, places where valuable technology might still be waiting. "There," Maria pointed to a section near the center. "That looks like a data core housing. If we're lucky, there might be something left inside." The climb down took an hour. They moved slowly, testing each handhold and making sure the metal wouldn't collapse under their weight. The aliens had built their bombs to destroy everything, but human engineering was tougher than they thought. Some things survived, hidden in the deepest parts of the ruins. Inside the shipyard, the air was thick and tasted of metal. Their flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing corridors that stretched away into shadow. Everything was covered in dust and debris, but Jake could see signs of the advanced technology that had once made this place run. Cables as thick as his arms snaked along the walls, and computer terminals sat dark and silent at every intersection. "This way," Maria said, following a map on her handheld scanner. "The main data core should be 3 levels down." They found the entrance to the core chamber blocked by a massive piece of debris. It took all 3 of them working together to move it. And even then they had to cut through several support beams with Maria's plasma torch. But finally, They squeezed through the gap and into the heart of the old facility. The data core was a sphere of black metal, the size of a small house, covered in blinking lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. Most of the lights were red, showing damage, but some still glowed green. Maria ran her scanner over the surface, and her eyes went wide. Jake, this is incredible. The core is still active. It's been running on backup power for 50 years, protecting the data inside. What kind of data? Ben asked, moving closer. Maria worked at her scanner for several minutes, her fingers dancing over the controls. Everything. Ship designs, weapon, blueprints, tactical manuals. This is the complete technical library of the human fleet. I thought it was all destroyed. Jake felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Real hope, not the false kind that people clung to when they were dying. This was different. This was a chance to fight back. Can you copy it? He asked. Give me an hour, Maria said, already connecting cables to the core. This is going to change everything, Jake. With this information, we can build ships again. Real ships, not the junkers we've been flying. As Maria worked, Jake walked to a broken window and looked out at the ruins of his world. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars, the aliens thought they had won. They thought humanity was finished, reduced to a few scattered tribes, picking through the garbage of their former civilization. They were wrong. Humans didn't give up. They adapted. They learned. And now, with the knowledge locked in this data core, they were going to remember how to fight. The galaxy was about to learn that counting out humanity was the biggest mistake the aliens had ever made. 5 years had passed since Jake Morrison found the data core in the ruins of New Detroit. Now he stood in a place that would have been impossible to imagine back then. A hidden base carved into the heart of an asteroid, humming with activity. As hundreds of humans worked to build something the galaxy had never seen before, Dr. Lisa Parker floated in the zero gravity of the command center, her fingers dancing across holographic displays that showed star maps stretching across dozens of sectors. Once, she had studied alien biology in clean laboratories on Earth. Now she coordinated a network of human survivors that spanned 17 different worlds, each group contributing their skills to a growing resistance movement. Report from there. Kepler Station Group, said Amy Rodriguez, a woman who had learned to speak 6 alien languages and could pass for a member of 3 different species. They've successfully infiltrated the Zephyrian supply depot. The guards never suspected a thing. Lisa nodded, marking the location on her map. Each red dot represented a human cell, hidden in the dark corners of alien space. Some were groups of former soldiers who had never stopped fighting. Others were engineers and scientists who had spent decades learning how alien technology worked. A few were merchants and traders who moved between worlds, carrying messages and supplies to those who needed them. What about the team on Proxima? 7? Lisa asked. Captain Ryan Mitchell's people have been busy, Amy replied with a grin. They raided another research facility last week. You're going to love what they found. The message from Ryan came through an encrypted channel that bounced between 12 different relay stations before reaching the asteroid base. The former Marine's face appeared on the main screen, his weathered features showing the strain of 5 years spent living in the shadows. Lisa, we hit the jackpot, Ryan said, his voice tight with excitement. This wasn't just any research facility. It was a psychological warfare center. The aliens have been studying us, trying to figure out how we think and fight. But here's the interesting part. They're terrified of us. Lisa leaned forward. What do you mean? I mean, the whole invasion wasn't about conquest. It was about prevention. They attacked us because they were afraid we would surpass them. There are reports here from 50 years ago, predicting that humans would become the dominant species in the galaxy within a century. They hit us first because they knew they couldn't compete with us long term. The implications hit Lisa like a physical blow. Everything they had believed about the war was wrong. The aliens hadn't destroyed human civilization because they were evil or greedy. They had done it because they were scared. And if the reports were accurate, they had been right to be scared. "Send me everything," Lisa said. "Every file, every report, every piece of data." While Ryan's team transmitted the stolen information, Lisa turned her attention to another priority. The resistance had grown far beyond what anyone had imagined, but growth brought new challenges. They needed weapons, ships, and supplies. Most importantly, they needed to prove that humanity was still a force to be reckoned with. Tony Blake was the man who made that possible. The former shipyard worker had become the Resistance's chief engineer, turning salvage and stolen technology into weapons of war. His workshop, built into a series of connected asteroids, looked like something from a madman's dream. Alien components hung from the ceiling like metal fruit, while human workers used tools that sparked and hummed with barely contained energy. "Show me what you've got, Tony," Lisa said as she entered the main workshop. Tony wiped his hands on a greasy rag and grinned. "Lisa, you're going to love this. We've been working on hybrid technology, combining systems from different alien species. The results are incredible." He led her to a workbench where a weapon lay partially assembled. It looked like nothing Lisa had ever seen, with smooth alien curves mixed with rough human modifications. Cables snaked between components that clearly weren't designed to work together, held in place by welds and brackets that belonged in a scrapyard. "This is a Zephyrian plasma rifle," Tony explained, "but we've modified it with Acrylian power, core and human targeting systems." The aliens designed their weapons to work with specific technologies. They never imagined someone would mix and match components from different species. "Does it work?" Lisa asked. "Better than work. It's 30% more powerful than the original design and twice as accurate." The aliens are so focused on perfection that they miss obvious improvements. We don't have that problem. Lisa picked up the weapon, feeling its weight. It was heavier than a standard rifle, but the balance was perfect. More importantly, it felt right in her hands. This was human engineering at its finest, taking what existed and making it better. "How many can you build?" she asked. "With our current resources? Maybe 50 a month. But if we can get more raw materials, we could double. The real limitation is manpower. We need more people who understand both human and alien technology." That was the constant problem. The resistance had grown, but it was still small compared to the vast alien empire. They needed to be smarter, faster, and more efficient than their enemies. Most importantly, they needed to start showing results. "It's time for Operation Nightfall," Lisa announced to the assembled cell leaders during their weekly meeting. "We've been hiding in the shadows long enough. It's time to remind the galaxy that humanity is still here." The plan was ambitious. 12 simultaneous raids on Zephyrian outposts, coordinated across 6 different sectors. Each strike would be quick and surgical, designed to capture supplies and intelligence while avoiding prolonged combat. The goal wasn't to hold territory, but to send a message. Ben Carter, now serving as the Resistance's military advisor, outlined the tactical approach. "We hit them hard and fast, then disappear before they can respond. Each team has specific objectives, weapons, technology, and most importantly, proof that we're not just a few scattered survivors." The raids launched at exactly the same moment, despite being separated by thousands of light years. Human teams struck supply depots, research stations, and communication centers with precision that surprised even their own leaders. The alien defenders, used to fighting conventional battles, found themselves facing an enemy that appeared from nowhere and vanished like ghosts. On the asteroid base, Lisa watched the reports come in. Successful strike on Altair 3. Weapons depot captured on Vega Prime. Research facility neutralized on Proxima 7. One by one, the missions reported success, each victory adding to humanity's growing reputation. But the most important victory wasn't measured in captured supplies or destroyed facilities. It was measured in the reaction of the alien empire. For the first time in 50 years, the Zephyrian High Command issued a galaxy-wide alert about human activity. They were taking the resistance seriously. We're not just survivors anymore, Lisa said as she watched the intelligence reports flow in. We're a threat, and that's exactly what we need to be. The asteroid base hummed with new energy as teams prepared for the next phase of operations. The resistance had proven they could strike anywhere, anytime. Now they needed to prove they could build something that would last. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't just the ability to survive. It was the ability to adapt, improve, and come back stronger than before. The aliens had won the first war, but the second war was just beginning. Tony Blake stood before the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. A starship that shouldn't exist. The vessel hung in the zero gravity of the construction bay, its hull gleaming under the work lights, like a predator waiting to strike. Every line of its design screamed impossibility, a fusion of technologies that alien engineers would have called madness. "She's perfect," whispered Maria Santos, floating beside him with tears in her eyes. The woman who had once fixed broken equipment, with spare parts, now watched as her designs became reality. "I never thought I'd see the day when we could build something like this." The ship was designated UHS Defiance, and it represented everything humanity had learned in 7 years of fighting from the shadows. Its hull was built from salvaged Zephyrian armor, reinforced with human engineering techniques that made it stronger than the original design. Corellian shield generators powered by Vexian energy cores created a defensive barrier that could withstand punishment no single species vessel could handle. And mounted throughout its frame were weapons that combined the best features of 4 different alien technologies. "How fast can she go?" asked Captain Steve Adams, the pilot who would take the Defiance on its first mission. Steve had been flying jury-rigged fighters for the Resistance since the beginning, but even he looked impressed by what they had built. "Faster than anything the aliens have," Tony replied with pride. "The hybrid drive system gives us speed and HUD maneuverability that their ships can't match. They designed for predictability. We designed for surprise." The construction of the Defiance had taken 2 years and resources from across the Resistance network. Every human cell had contributed something. Rare metals from the miners on Asteroid Belt 7, computer components from the tech salvagers on Kepler Station, and weapons systems from the raiders who had been striking alien convoys. It was a ship built by hope and determination, welded together by the shared dream of striking back. Dr. Rachel Murphy joined them at the observation window, her tablet showing the final test results. The scientist had spent months figuring out how to make incompatible alien technologies work together, and her breakthrough had made the Defiance possible. "The integration is complete," she announced. "All systems are showing green. The ship is ready for combat operations." "Then it's time to give her a proper test," Steve said, already heading for the airlock. "I've been itching to see what this baby can do." The target was a Zephyrian weapons depot in the Centauri system, heavily defended and considered impregnable by alien standards. For the Resistance, it was the perfect opportunity to test their new capabilities while gathering the advanced technology they needed for the next phase of operations. The Defiance slipped through hyperspace like a shadow, its hybrid drive leaving. No signature that alien sensors could detect. Steve felt the ship respond to his commands with a precision that amazed him. Human fighters were fast and maneuverable, but they were also fragile. Alien ships were tough and well-armed, but they were slow and predictable. The Defiance was everything good about both designs, with none of the weaknesses. Dropping out of hyperspace in 3.2.1, Steve announced. The Centauri system materialized around them, stars wheeling in the distance as the Defiance emerged from its interdimensional tunnel. Ahead, the weapons depot hung in space like a metallic spider, its defensive platforms bristling with enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. Sensors are picking up 12 patrol ships, reported Maria from the weapons console. They're moving. To intercept. Perfect, Steve said with a grin. Let's show them what human engineering can do. The first alien ship to reach them was a standard Zephyrian cruiser, twice the size of the Defiance and armed with enough weapons to level the city. Its captain probably expected a quick victory against what looked like a primitive human vessel. Instead, the Defiance danced around the cruiser's fire like a boxer, avoiding a slow punch, its hybrid engines providing acceleration that the alien ship couldn't match. Firing main weapons. Maria announced the Defiance's guns lit up space with energy beams that sliced through the cruiser's shields like they were made of paper. The alien vessel, designed to fight others of its kind, had no defense against weapons. That combined multiple technologies in ways its creators never imagined. Within seconds, the cruiser was drifting powerless, its crew abandoning ship. 11 more coming in, Maria reported. They're trying to surround us. Good luck with that, Steve laughed, throwing the Defiance into a spiral that would have torn apart a normal ship. The hybrid hull design distributed stress in ways that made impossible maneuvers possible, while the alien patrol ships struggled to keep up with their target. One by one, the defenders fell to the Defiance's superior firepower and maneuverability. The alien ships fought bravely, but they were facing something they had never encountered before, a vessel that broke all the rules of space combat. When the last patrol ship exploded in a brief flare of light, the weapons depot stood alone and defenseless. All right, people, Steve announced. Time to go shopping. The depot's automated defenses were impressive by alien standards, but they were programmed to fight conventional ships using conventional tactics. The Defiance simply ignored the main defensive grid and struck at the station's weak points with surgical precision. Within an hour, the facility was secured and ready for looting. Tony Blake led the boarding party, his eyes wide with excitement as they entered the depot's main storage areas. Crates of advanced weapons lined the walls, while sealed containers held technology that the Resistance had only dreamed of acquiring. But the real prize was in the research section, prototype weapons that the aliens had been developing for their own military. This is incredible, Tony breathed, examining a device that looked like a cross between a rifle and a small cannon. This is a gravitational pulse weapon. I've seen the theoretical papers, but I never thought anyone had actually built one. Can we copy it? Asked Maria. Better than copy it. We can improve it. The aliens always build for their own biology and psychology. We can adapt it for human use and probably make it more effective in the process. The raid on the Centauri depot was a complete success, but more importantly, it proved that the Resistance had reached a new level of capability. The Defiance had performed flawlessly, and the captured technology would allow them to build more ships of the same type. Back at the asteroid base, Dr. Rachel Murphy made the breakthrough that would change everything. Working with the technology captured from the depot, she discovered how to mass-produce the hybrid systems that made the Defiance so effective. We can build them, she announced to the assembled leadership. Not just one ship, but hundreds. The manufacturing process is actually simpler than what the aliens use, because we're not trying to achieve perfection. We're trying to achieve effectiveness. Lisa. Parker looked at the production estimates and felt her heart race. How long? 6 months for the first batch of 20 ships. After that, we can increase production as we capture more resources. Within 2 years, we could have a fleet of over 100 vessels. The implications were staggering. For 7 years, the Resistance had been a guerrilla force, striking from the shadows and disappearing before the aliens could respond. But with a fleet of ships like the Defiance, they could begin fighting conventional battles. They could start taking and holding territory. We'll call it Operation Phoenix, Lisa decided, the rebirth of the human fleet. Construction began immediately, with teams working around the clock to build the ships that would carry humanity back to the stars. The asteroid base expanded, with new facilities carved from rock and metal. Supply convoys arrived from across the Resistance network, carrying the raw materials needed to build a war machine. Ben Carter watched the frantic activity with satisfaction. The old soldier had never stopped believing that humanity would fight back, and now he was seeing his faith rewarded. "You know what this means?" he said to Jake Morrison as they watched workers install weapons on the latest ship to roll off the production line. "Yeah," Jake replied. "It means we're not just survivors anymore. We're not even just Resistance fighters. We're becoming something the galaxy hasn't seen in 50 years. What's that?" Jake smiled, the expression transforming his weathered face. "We're becoming human again. The species that builds starships and explores the galaxy. The species that doesn't back down from a fight." The first squadron of new ships launched 3 months later, their crews trained on the lessons learned from the Defiance's successful missions. They struck at targets across 6 different sectors, each raid more successful than the last. The aliens were beginning to realize that they weren't fighting scattered survivors anymore. They were fighting a military force that was growing stronger with each passing day. Operation Phoenix had begun, and with it, humanity's return to the stars. The aliens had thought they were fighting a dying species. Soon they would learn that they had awakened something far more dangerous, a species that refused to die. Admiral Kate Thompson stood on the bridge of the UHS Phoenix, watching as her fleet prepared for the largest human military operation in over 50 years. Through the viewports, she could see hundreds of ships spread across space like a swarm of angry wasps, each one bristling with weapons that had been impossible to imagine just 2 years ago. The Phoenix itself was a marvel of human engineering, 10 times larger than the original Defiance, and serving as both a warship and a mobile factory. Its massive hull contained construction bays where new ships were built even as the fleet moved through space, automated systems that could turn raw materials into weapons of war in a matter of hours. "Fleet status report," Kate ordered, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent 3 decades fighting impossible odds. "All ships report ready for Operation Thunder," replied Commander Dan Foster, a young officer who had grown up in the Resistance and knew no other life than Nye. "War. Strike Group Alpha is in position at the Vega system. Strike Group Beta is holding at Proxima. Strike Group Gamma is ready to move on Altair." Kate nodded, studying the tactical display that showed the deployment of her forces. The human fleet had grown beyond everyone's wildest dreams, but it was still small compared to the vast Zephyrian Empire. What they lacked in numbers, they made up for in mobility and innovation. They had learned to fight like a pack of wolves, striking fast and hard before disappearing into the darkness between stars. "Any word from intelligence?" she asked Nina. Walsh, the Resistance's chief intelligence officer, appeared on the main screen from her position aboard the stealth ship, UHS Ghost. The former spy had spent years infiltrating alien society, and her network of informants now reached into the highest levels of the Zephyrian government. "The Empire is starting to crack," Nina reported. "Our recent victories have caused panic among their leadership. 3 of the 6 species are demanding more protection for their home worlds, and they're pulling fleets back from the frontier to defend core systems. What about their response to our raids?" confused and uncoordinated. They're used to fighting conventional wars, where fleets meet in space and slug it out until one side wins. They don't know how to deal with an enemy that appears everywhere at once and disappears before they can respond. Kate smiled grimly. That was exactly what they had hoped for. The human way of war had evolved far beyond what it had been before the invasion. They no longer tried to hold territory or fight pitched battles. Instead, they struck at the enemy's weaknesses, captured what they needed, and moved on before reinforcements could arrive. "Begin Operation Thunder," she ordered, across 6 different star systems. Human strike fleets materialized from hyperspace with perfect timing. Each force was small by galactic standards, 50 ships or fewer, but they moved with a coordination that the aliens had never seen before. They didn't attack the strongest defenses or try to capture important planets. Instead, they targeted the infrastructure that kept the Zephyrian Empire running: supply depots, communication centers, and industrial facilities. Commander Dan Foster led the assault on the Vega system, his strike group appearing just outside the orbit of the 4th planet, where a major Zephyrian naval base had been built. The base's defenses were formidable, with orbital platforms that could destroy most fleets, but the humans had learned to use the aliens' own tactics against them. "Launching decoy drones," Dan announced, as hundreds of small unmanned craft streaked toward the base. To alien sensors, each drone looked like a full-sized warship, creating the illusion of a massive fleet bearing down on the defenders. The Zephyrian defense platforms opened fire, their weapons lighting up space as they targeted the incoming threats. But while they were busy shooting at fake ships, the real human fleet slipped around the planet's moon and struck at the base's vulnerable rear defenses. "All ships target the supply depots," Dan ordered. "We want those resources, not the glory of destroying them." The human ships moved like dancers, weaving between the alien defenses with grace that came from years of practice. Their hybrid weapons cut through enemy shields as if they were made of tissue, while their advanced hull designs shrugged off return fire that would have destroyed conventional vessels. Within an hour, the naval base was secured, and its supply depots were being emptied by human cargo ships. The aliens had learned to build impressive defenses, but they had never learned to defend against an enemy that didn't want to conquer territory, only to take what it needed and leave. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as humans strike. Forces hit target after target with surgical precision. The aliens tried to respond, but their fleets were scattered, and their commanders were confused by tactics they had never encountered before. By the time they could organize a proper defense, the humans were already gone, leaving behind only empty storage facilities and bewildered survivors. The most important victory came in the Centauri system, where Captain Steve Adams led a raid on a massive Zephyrian industrial complex. The facility produced the advanced computer systems that coordinated the alien empire's military communications, making it one of the most heavily defended installations in known space. "Remember, we're not here to destroy anything," Steve reminded his crew as they approached the target. "We want to capture those computers intact. The intelligence value is worth more than any amount of raw materials." The raid was a masterpiece of human tactical thinking. Instead of attacking the complex directly, Steve's ships targeted the defensive satellites that protected it, using captured Zephyrian technology to hack into the alien command systems. Within minutes, the satellites were firing on each other, their own weapons turning the defensive grid into chaos. While the aliens struggled to regain control of their defenses, human boarding parties landed on the industrial complex and began the delicate work of capturing the computer systems without damaging them. It was dangerous work, requiring soldiers to fight through defended corridors, while technicians worked to shut down security systems and protect valuable data. But the humans had learned to excel at this kind of operation. They moved with the confidence of professionals who had been refining their techniques for years, each team member knowing exactly what they needed to do and how to do it quickly. Computers are secured, reported Maria Santos, who had personally led the technical team. We've got complete access to their communication protocols and fleet deployment data. This is going to give us a huge advantage in future operations. The success of Operation Thunder sent shockwaves through the Zephyrian Empire. For the first time since the original invasion, alien worlds were experiencing raids on their home systems. The humans were no longer hiding in the dark corners of space. They were striking at the heart of alien civilization with confidence and skill. Nina, Walsh's intelligence network, reported growing panic among the alien leadership. Emergency sessions were being called. Fleets were being recalled from frontier systems, and there were rumors of open disagreements between the 6 species that made up the Empire. They're scared, Nina reported during the post-operation briefing. Really scared. The computer systems we captured from Centauri contained contingency plans for evacuating core worlds if the human threat continues to grow. Kate Thompson studied the intelligence reports with satisfaction. The Resistance had achieved something remarkable. They had forced the galaxy's most powerful empire to take them seriously as a military threat. But more importantly, they had proven that humanity could not only survive, but thrive in the face of overwhelming odds. What's our next move? Asked Ben Carter, who had been promoted to strategic planning after years of successful operations. Kate looked at the star map showing the current positions of human fleets. They now numbered over 500 ships, each one more advanced than anything the aliens had built. More importantly, they had developed a way of fighting that played to humanity's strengths while exploiting their enemies' weaknesses. We're going to give them a choice, she decided. We're going to show them that we're not just raiders anymore. We're a force that can challenge them directly. And then we're going to offer them the chance to negotiate. The target she chose was audacious. The Zephyrian sector capital at Wolf 359, one of the most heavily defended systems in the galaxy. It wasn't a raid this time. It was a demonstration. The entire human fleet would appear in the system and systematically dismantle its defenses, proving that humanity was ready to fight the Empire on equal terms. Are you sure about this? Asked Jake Morrison, who had become Kate's closest advisor. If we lose the fleet, we lose everything. We won't lose, Kate replied with confidence. We've learned too much and come too far to fail now. The aliens thought they were fighting a dying species. It's time to show them they were wrong. The human fleet began moving toward Wolf 359, 500 ships, carrying the hopes and dreams of a species that refused to surrender. The final confrontation between humanity and the Zephyrian Empire was about to begin, and this time the humans were ready to win. The meeting took place on a neutral space station, far from any military forces. But Alex Turner could feel the weight of history pressing down on him as he walked through the corridors toward the conference room. The elected president of the reformed human government had once been a simple factory worker in the ruins of Chicago, but now he carried the hopes of his entire species on his shoulders. Beside him walked the heroes who had built humanity's impossible comeback. Jake Morrison, the scavenger who had found the data core that started it all. Maria Santos, the engineer who had turned alien technology into human weapons. Lisa Parker, the scientist who had coordinated the resistance network. And Tony Blake, the shipyard worker who had built the fleet that brought them to this moment. Remember, Alex said quietly as they approached the conference room, we're not here to beg for mercy. We're here to negotiate as equals. The demonstration at Wolf 359 proved that we can fight them on their own terms. The demonstration had been everything Kate Thompson had promised. The human fleet had appeared in the heavily defended system, and proceeded to systematically dismantle its defenses with surgical precision. They hadn't destroyed the installations or killed unnecessary personnel. Instead, they had simply proven that they could, sending a message that echoed across the galaxy. Humanity was back, and they were offering the Zephyrian Empire one chance to end the war peacefully. The alien delegation was already waiting in the conference room, their strange faces showing mixtures of fear, anger, and grudging respect. Admiral Zektar of the Zephyrian Navy sat at the head of the table, his blue-scaled features rigid with the discipline of a career military officer. Beside him were representatives from each of the 6 species that made up the Empire, all of them looking uncomfortable with the situation they found themselves in. President Turner, Admiral Zektar, said in heavily accented English, "We meet under circumstances that none of us would have predicted 50 years ago." "That's true," Alex replied, taking his seat across from the alien admiral. "But here we are, and now we need to decide what happens next." The negotiations that followed were unlike anything in galactic history. For the first time, the Zephyrian Empire was dealing with an enemy that had not only survived their best efforts to destroy it, but had come back stronger than before. The aliens were forced to acknowledge that humanity was no longer a minor species, to be brushed aside, but a major power that demanded respect. "Your species has demonstrated remarkable tenacity," admitted Counselor Vexhara, the Krillian representative whose insect-like features clicked nervously as she spoke. "We had believed your civilization was completely destroyed. We were clearly mistaken." "You were more than mistaken," said Jake Morrison, his voice carrying the hard edge of someone who had spent decades fighting for survival. "You were arrogant. You thought we would just lie down and die because you had bigger ships and more advanced technology. You forgot that humans don't give up." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. These beings had been enemies for 50 years, and the hatred ran deep on both sides. But there was also a grudging respect, born from the recognition that they were all survivors of a war that had changed the galaxy forever. "Let's discuss terms," Alex said, pulling out a data tablet that contained humanity's demands. "First, the Zephyrian Empire will recognize the reformed Human Republic as a sovereign government with full rights under galactic law. Second, all human worlds and colonies occupied during the invasion will be returned to human control. Third, the Empire will pay reparations for the destruction of our civilization." Admiral Ziktar's scales darkened with anger. "Those terms are unacceptable. The Empire does not negotiate with terrorists and pirates." "Terrorists?" Maria Santos laughed, the sound cold and bitter. "You invaded our space, destroyed our cities, and tried to wipe out our entire species. We're not the terrorists here. We're the victims who refuse to stay victims." "The original invasion was a preventive action," insisted Dr. Korthnall, the Dexian scientist whose crystalline form pulsed with agitated light. "Our projections showed that your species would become a threat to galactic stability within a century. We acted to prevent a greater catastrophe." "Your projections were right," Lisa Parker said calmly. "We would have surpassed you. We still will. The only question is whether it happens through cooperation or conquest." The alien delegates exchanged nervous glances. They had seen what human technology could accomplish when driven by desperation and anger. The hybrid ships, the innovative tactics, the ability to take their own weapons and make them better. All of it pointed to a species that would indeed dominate the galaxy given enough time. "What guarantee do we have that you won't simply use peace as an opportunity to build a larger fleet?" asked Commander Yillenorth of the Vornik, his tentacled face showing deep concern. "The same guarantee you gave us 50 years ago," Tony Blake replied. "None at all. The difference is, we're offering you the chance to be partners instead of enemies. You can benefit from human innovation, or you can fight it. Your choice." The negotiations continued for 3 days, with both sides making concessions and compromises. The aliens agreed to return most human worlds and pay limited reparations, while humanity agreed to restrictions on military shipbuilding and joint oversight of advanced technology development. But the real breakthrough came when Nina Walsh presented intelligence that changed everything, evidence that a new threat was emerging from the galactic core, something that made the human-alien war look like a children's argument. "We call them the Devourers," Nina explained, activating a holographic display that showed strange organic ships spreading through distant star systems. "They don't conquer worlds, they consume them. Everything: rock, metal, atmosphere, life. They turn entire solar systems into raw materials for their fleet." The alien delegates stared at the images in horror. Here was a threat that made their fears about human expansion seem trivial. The Devourers were already moving toward inhabited space, and their fleet was massive beyond comprehension. "How long before they reach our sectors?" asked Admiral Zektar, his military mind already calculating defensive strategies. 2 years, maybe 3, Nina replied. "And when they get here, they won't care about our politics or our territorial disputes. They'll just eat everything and move on." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Suddenly, the war between humans and aliens seemed like a luxury they couldn't afford. They had a common enemy now, one that threatened the survival of all life in the galaxy. "We need to work together," Alex said finally. "Human innovation combined with alien resources and industrial capacity. It's the only way we'll have a chance against something like this." Admiral Zektar was quiet for a long moment, his tactical mind working through the possibilities. Finally, he nodded slowly. "The Empire is prepared to discuss a military alliance, but there must be conditions. Safeguards to ensure that human technology is not used against us once the Devourer threat is eliminated." "Agreed," Alex replied. "But the same conditions apply to alien technology. We're partners now, not master and servant." The final agreement was signed 6 hours later, establishing the Galactic Defense Alliance between the Human Republic and the Zephyrian Empire. It was an uneasy partnership, built on mutual need rather than trust. But it was a start dot as the delegates prepared to leave. Jake Morrison approached Admiral Zektar for a private conversation. The two veterans studied each other for a moment, seeing the recognition of shared experience in each other's eyes. "You know this won't be easy," Jake said. 50 years of hatred doesn't disappear overnight." "No," the Admiral agreed. "But survival is a powerful motivator. Your species has proven that beyond any doubt." 3 months later, the first joint human-alien fleet launched from the shipyards of Proxima Station. The vessels were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, combining the best of both civilizations' technologies in ways that neither could have achieved alone. Human innovation had been married to alien engineering, creating weapons and defenses that were greater than the sum of their parts. Kate Thompson stood on the bridge of the flagship UHS Alliance, watching as hundreds of ships from dozens of species formed up in perfect formation. Beside her, Admiral Zektar commanded the alien contingent, their old enmity set aside in the face of a greater threat. "Fleet reports ready for departure," announced Commander Dan Foster, who now served as the Alliance's tactical coordinator. Then, "Let's go save the galaxy," Kate said with a smile. Again, as the fleet jumped into hyperspace, heading toward the outer rim where the Devourers had last been sighted, the transformation was complete. Humanity had risen from the ashes of defeat, to become not just survivors, but leaders in the fight for galactic civilization. They had proven that sometimes the greatest comeback comes not from revenge, but from the courage to turn enemies into allies. The war with the Zephyrian Empire was over. The war for the survival of all life was just beginning. And at the heart of the Galactic Defense Fleet, flying ships built from scrap and powered by determination, were the humans who had refused to die. The galaxy would never underestimate them again.